Your medicine cabinet is expensive, full of side effects, and honestly, a little boring. What if I told you that 15 of the most powerful natural remedies on earth could be growing in pots on your patio right now, brewing into teas that calm your nerves, clear your sinuses, settle your stomach, and help you sleep, all without a single prescription? You don't need a farm. You don't need acres of land. You need containers, a sunny corner, and about 10 minutes of your time today. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll know exactly what to plant, how to grow it, and how to turn it into a cup of tea that actually does something for your body. Before we dig in, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell. The Practical Gardener drops new container gardening guides every week, and you don't want to miss the next one. Now, a quick note. Everything in this video is for educational purposes only. These are traditional herbal remedies, not medical advice, so always check with your doctor before adding a new herb to your routine, especially if you're on medication. One more thing before we start planting. You truly don't need a backyard for any of this. Every single herb on today's list can be grown in a pot on a balcony, a windowsill, a fire escape, or a sunny patio corner. All you need is the right container, the right soil, and a little patience. So grab a coffee, get comfortable, and let's build your container tea garden from the ground up. Kicking things off at number 15 is peppermint, the herb everyone thinks they know, but almost nobody grows correctly. Peppermint is a vigorous, spreading perennial with square stems and serrated, deep green leaves that release an unmistakable cooling aroma the moment you brush against them. For containers, grab a sturdy 3-gallon plastic pot with drainage holes and plant it alone. Peppermint's roots spread aggressively underground, and if you put it in the ground or share a pot with anything else, it will take over completely. Fill the pot with a standard, moisture-retentive potting mix. The easiest way to start is from a nursery starter plant or a rooted cutting, since peppermint rarely grows true from seed. Place your pot somewhere with partial sun. Peppermint actually prefers a few hours of afternoon shade, especially in hot climates. Water consistently, keeping the soil evenly moist but never soggy, and feed it once a month with a diluted, balanced liquid fertilizer. You'll be harvesting within about 6 to 8 weeks. Simply pinch stems back just above a leaf node, which encourages the plant to branch out and grow bushier. For tea, steep a handful of fresh or dried leaves in hot water for 5 to 7 minutes. Traditional herbal medicine has long used peppermint tea to ease bloating, calm an upset stomach, and relieve tension headaches, largely thanks to its high menthol content, which relaxes the muscles of the digestive tract. Here's something fun. Peppermint isn't actually a true species. It's a natural hybrid between watermint and spearmint, discovered growing wild in England in the 1600s. Every peppermint plant alive today is essentially a clone traced back to that original hybrid. At number 14 is lemon balm, a gentle member of the mint family that smells exactly like its name suggests, bright, citrusy, and instantly relaxing. Its heart-shaped, crinkled leaves make it as attractive as it is useful. Like its minty cousins, lemon balm spreads readily, so a dedicated 3 to 5-gallon container is your best bet. Use a rich, well-draining potting mix, and either start from seed indoors a few weeks before your last frost, or transplant a young nursery, start directly into the pot. Lemon balm is remarkably forgiving. It tolerates partial shade beautifully, which makes it perfect for a patio spot that doesn't get full sun all day. Water when the top inch of soil dries out, and feed lightly every 4 to 6 weeks with an organic liquid fertilizer. Harvest by snipping the top few inches of stems throughout the growing season. Regular trimming keeps the plant compact and encourages fresh new growth. For tea, use fresh or dried leaves steeped for about 10 minutes. Herbalists have used lemon balm for centuries as a calming nervine, and modern interest in the herb has focused on its mild sedative and mood-lifting properties, making it a popular choice for easing everyday stress and supporting restful sleep. A fascinating fact, the genus name for lemon balm, Melissa, comes from the Greek word for honeybee. Beekeepers have rubbed the crushed leaves inside empty hives for centuries, believing the scent would attract and calm new swarms. Number 13 brings us ginger, not a typical container herb, but an absolute powerhouse once you learn to grow it properly indoors or on a warm patio. Ginger grows from a rhizome, not a seed, so you'll need a wide, shallow container. Think 5-gallon size, but low and broad rather than deep. since the rhizome spreads horizontally just beneath the soil surface. Fill it with a rich, loose potting mix heavy in compost. To plant, take a piece of fresh ginger root from the grocery store with visible eyes or buds and bury it about 2 inches deep, buds facing upward. Ginger loves warmth and humidity, so place your container somewhere with bright, indirect light rather than harsh direct sun, which can scorch the leaves. Keep the soil consistently moist and feed every 3 to 4 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer during the growing season. Here's the catch: ginger is slow. You'll wait 8 to 10 months before harvest. When the leaves begin to yellow and die back, it's time. Gently tip the container over, break off a portion of the rhizome for use, and replant the rest to keep growing. For tea, peel and slice a thumb-sized piece of fresh root and simmer it in water for 10 to 15 minutes. Ginger tea has a long history of use for settling nausea, supporting digestion, and easing the aches of a common cold, largely credited to its active compound, gingerol, which has natural anti-inflammatory properties. Fun fact: ginger has been cultivated for so long, over 5,000 years, that no one has ever found it growing truly wild. Every ginger plant on Earth exists because humans have propagated it, generation after generation. Coming in at number 12 is calendula, often called pot marigold, a cheerful annual that produces a non-stop show of golden orange blooms all summer long, and every single one of them is useful. Calendula is wonderfully low maintenance, making it perfect for beginners. Use a 3-gallon pot filled with any standard potting soil. This plant isn't fussy. Sow the seeds directly into the container about 1/4 inch deep. They germinate quickly, often within a week to 10 days. Place your pot in full sun to partial shade. Water whenever the soil feels dry an inch down, and feed lightly once a month. That's really all it needs. The key to calendula is continuous harvesting. Pick the flowers as soon as they're fully open, ideally every 2 to 3 days. The more you pick, the more the plant produces. Let flowers go to seed, and the show shuts down fast. To make tea, dry the petals or use them fresh, steeping a small handful in hot water for 8 to 10 minutes. Calendula tea has a long folk history as a gentle internal soother, and topically, infused calendula oil has been used for generations to support skin healing. The bright petals are rich in flavonoids, plant compounds associated with anti-inflammatory and antioxidant activity. Here's a fascinating fact: calendula flowers are edible and were once used as a natural food dye. Renaissance-era cooks tossed the petals into soups, rice, and butter to mimic the golden color of expensive saffron, earning it the nickname poor man's saffron, a trick still used by budget-conscious cooks today. All right, we're 1/5 of the way through the list. Which one has caught your eye so far? Drop it in the comments. Let's keep going. At number 11 is rosemary, a woody, needle-leafed Mediterranean shrub that thrives on neglect and rewards you with one of the most invigorating teas on this entire list. Because rosemary hates wet feet, use a terracotta or unglazed clay pot around 5 gallons in size. The porous material lets excess moisture escape. Fill it with a gritty, fast-draining mix, like a cactus or succulent blend, since heavy, moisture-retaining soil is the #1 killer of container rosemary. Rosemary is notoriously slow and unreliable from seed, so save yourself the frustration and start with a nursery plant or a rooted cutting. Give it the sunniest, hottest spot you have. This plant evolved on sun-baked Mediterranean hillsides and thrives in conditions that would stress most other herbs. Water only when the soil is completely dry, and skip the fertilizer almost entirely. Rosemary actually performs best in lean, poor soil. Overfeeding produces weak, floppy growth with a diminished aroma. You can harvest rosemary year-round once established. Snip the woody stems with sharp shears, taking no more than 1/3 of the plant at a time. For tea, crush a sprig of fresh or dried leaves and steep in hot water for 5 to 8 minutes. The flavor is bold, piney, and slightly bitter. Rosemary tea has traditionally been used to support mental clarity and digestion, and rosemary's aromatic oils have long been associated with improved focus and memory in folk practice. A fascinating fact: rosemary has been a symbol of remembrance since ancient Greece, where students reportedly wore sprigs of it in their hair while studying for exams, believing it sharpened memory and concentration. Number 10 is holy basil, known as tulsi, one of the most revered plants in Indian herbal tradition and an absolute staple of the modern adaptogen tea aisle. Tulsi grows into a bushy, aromatic plant with purple-tinged stems and a peppery, clove-like scent. A 5-gallon plastic or fabric pot works beautifully. Fill it with a rich, well-draining potting mix. Start seeds indoors about 6 weeks before your last frost, since Tulsi needs warm soil to germinate. It's a true tropical at heart and hates the cold. Once temperatures are reliably warm, move it outside to a spot with full sun. Water regularly to keep the soil consistently moist, and feed every 3 to 4 weeks with a balanced organic fertilizer to fuel its rapid, bushy growth. To keep the plant productive, pinch off flower buds as soon as they appear. This redirects energy back into leaf production, which is what you actually want for tea. Harvest by snipping stem tips regularly throughout the season. Frequent pruning keeps Tulsi full and leafy rather than tall and leggy. Steep fresh or dried leaves in hot water for 8 to 10 minutes for a warm, slightly spicy, clove-like tea. In Ayurvedic tradition, Tulsi has been used for centuries to help the body manage everyday stress and support the respiratory and immune systems, and it remains one of the most widely researched adaptogenic herbs in the world today. Here's a fascinating fact. Tulsi is considered sacred in Hinduism, often grown in a special courtyard planter outside homes and temples, where it's worshipped daily as a living embodiment of the goddess Lakshmi. At number 9 is sage, a silvery, velvet leaf perennial that has flavored kitchens and medicine chests for thousands of years. Sage wants exactly what rosemary wants: excellent drainage and lots of sun. A 3 to 5 gallon terracotta pot filled with a sandy, well-draining mix is ideal. You can start sage from seed, though germination is slow and a little unpredictable. Many gardeners prefer starting with a young nursery plant for faster results. Place your pot in full sun and water only when the soil has dried out completely. Sage is highly drought-tolerant once established and will actually rot in consistently damp soil. Fertilize sparingly, just once in early spring, as rich soil dilutes the essential oils that give sage its signature punch. Harvest by snipping individual leaves or whole stems as needed. Sage is one of the few herbs on this list you can pick from almost year-round in mild climates. For tea, steep a small handful of fresh or dried leaves for 5 minutes. Sage tea has a bold, savory, slightly camphorous flavor. Traditionally, sage tea has been used to soothe sore throats and calm minor digestive upset, and gargling cooled sage tea remains a well-known folk remedy for throat irritation. A fascinating fact, sage's botanical name, salvia, comes from the Latin word salvare, meaning to heal or to save, the same root that gives us the word salvation, a nod to just how highly ancient physicians regarded this humble garden herb. Number 8 is thyme, a low, creeping herb with tiny leaves that pack an outsized punch, both in the kitchen and in a mug of tea. Because thyme naturally grows along rocky Mediterranean slopes, it's perfectly suited to a shallow, wide container. A 12-inch wide pot works well, filled with a gritty, fast-draining mix similar to what you'd use for succulents. Thyme germinates slowly from seed, so many gardeners opt for a nursery start or a small rooted cutting instead. Place the pot in full sun and let the soil dry out completely between waterings. Thyme is exceptionally drought-tolerant and will develop root rot quickly in soggy conditions. Skip the fertilizer almost entirely, as thyme's flavor and aroma are strongest when the plant is grown lean and a little stressed. Harvest by trimming stems back by about a third whenever the plant looks full, which also keeps it from becoming woody and sparse. For tea, steep a small bundle of fresh sprigs in hot water for 6 to 8 minutes. Thyme tea has a long folk history as a remedy for coughs and chest congestion, thanks to its natural compound thymol, which has been studied for its antimicrobial properties and is still used today in many over-the-counter cough remedies and mouthwashes. Here's a fascinating fact. Ancient Egyptians used thyme in the embalming process, and Roman soldiers bathed in thyme-infused water before battle, believing it would give them courage and strength. We're a third of the way through. Which of these would you actually drink daily? Let me know down below, and let's keep pushing into the top 7. At number 7 is fennel, a tall, feathery leaf plant that smells like black licorice and doubles as both a vegetable and a powerful digestive herb. Fennel develops a long taproot, So choose a deep container, at least 5 gallons, filled with a rich, loose potting mix. Sow seeds directly into the pot, since fennel doesn't transplant well once its taproot has formed. Thin seedlings to give each plant enough room to develop its characteristic bulb at the base. Place the container in full sun and water consistently, keeping the soil evenly moist. Inconsistent watering causes fennel to bolt prematurely and turn bitter. Feed every 3 to 4 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer to support its rapid, tall growth. You can harvest fennel fronds continuously throughout the season by snipping the feathery leaves as needed. The seeds, which form after the plant flowers, are the real tea star. Allow the flower heads to dry fully on the plant, then shake the seeds loose into a container. For tea, lightly crush a teaspoon of seeds and steep in hot water for 10 minutes. Fennel tea has been used for generations to ease bloating and gas, and it's still commonly recommended in folk practice as a gentle remedy for infant colic when brewed weak and given in small amounts under a doctor's guidance. A fascinating fact: ancient Greek Olympic athletes reportedly chewed fennel seeds before competitions, believing the herb would boost their strength and courage. The plant's Greek name, marathon, is even believed to be the origin of the town Marathon, famous for its wild fennel fields. Number 6 is stinging nettle. Yes, the same plant that stings you on a hike is also one of the most nutrient-dense tea herbs you can grow once you learn to handle it safely. Nettle spreads via underground rhizomes, so containment is essential. Use a heavy-duty 5-gallon pot to keep its roots in check. Fill it with a rich, moisture-retentive potting mix loaded with compost, since nettle is a hungry, fast-growing plant. Start from seed or a nursery division, and place the container somewhere with partial to full sun. Keep the soil consistently moist. Nettle does not tolerate drought well, and feed every 3 to 4 weeks with a nitrogen-rich organic fertilizer to fuel its lush, leafy growth. Here's the critical part: always wear thick gloves when harvesting nettle. Snip the top leaf pairs with scissors, never bare hands, since the fine hairs on the leaves and stems cause a stinging, itchy reaction on contact. The good news? That sting completely disappears the moment the leaves are dried or cooked. For tea, steep a handful of dried nettle leaves in hot water for 10 minutes, producing a mild, earthy, slightly grassy brew. Nettle tea has been used traditionally as a general tonic, valued for its dense mineral content, including iron, calcium, and magnesium, and it's long been associated with folk remedies for seasonal allergy relief. Here's a fascinating fact: nettle fibers were woven into cloth long before cotton became widespread in Europe. German soldiers' uniforms in World War I were reportedly made partly from nettle fabric during cotton shortages. Breaking into the top 5 is hibiscus, the plant behind that vivid ruby red tea you've probably seen labeled sour tea or Jamaica at specialty grocery stores. For container growing, choose the hardy hibiscus variety grown for tea, Hibiscus sabdarifa, and use a large 10-gallon pot, since this plant grows tall and bushy over a single season. Fill it with a rich, well-draining potting mix. Start seeds indoors about 8 weeks before your last frost, since hibiscus needs a long, warm growing season to flower, and set the calyces used for tea. Once temperatures are reliably warm, move the plant to a spot in full sun. Water deeply and regularly, especially during hot weather, and feed every 3 to 4 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer to support its vigorous growth. As the plant matures, it will produce pale yellow flowers. But the part you actually want is the calyx, the fleshy red structure that forms at the base of the flower after it drops. Harvest the calyces once they're plump and deep red, typically in late summer through fall. Dry them thoroughly, then steep a small handful in hot water for 8 to 10 minutes for a tart, cranberry-like tea. Hibiscus tea has a long history of use across Africa, the Caribbean, and the Middle East as a refreshing, tangy beverage, and it's rich in vitamin C and anthocyanins, the same antioxidant pigments that give the calyces their brilliant red color. Here's a fascinating fact. In Egypt, hibiscus tea, known as carcade, was historically served at royal celebrations and weddings, and it remains the country's unofficial national drink to this day. At number 4 is chamomile, the gold standard of bedtime tea and one of the gentlest, most forgiving herbs on this entire list. Chamomile has a shallow, fibrous root system, so skip the deep pots. A wide, Shallow container like a window box or a broad 3-gallon planter is ideal. Fill it with a light, well-draining potting mix. Scatter the tiny seeds across the soil surface and press them in gently without covering them, since chamomile seeds need light to germinate. Keep the soil lightly moist during germination, which typically takes 1 to 2 weeks. Place the container somewhere with full morning sun and a bit of afternoon shade in hot climates, and water whenever the top inch of soil feels dry. Chamomile is a light feeder, so skip fertilizer altogether. It genuinely doesn't need it. The harvest routine is simple but daily. Pick the small, daisy-like flowers the moment their white petals begin to droop backward, which signals peak potency. Regular picking encourages the plant to keep flowering for weeks. Dry the flower heads and steep a small handful in hot water for 5 to 7 minutes for a smooth, faintly apple-scented tea. Chamomile has been used for centuries as a calming bedtime ritual and a gentle digestive aid, and it remains one of the most studied herbs for supporting relaxation and mild sleep troubles. A fascinating fact: the name chamomile comes from the Greek words for earth and apple, a direct nod to the crisp, apple-like scent released whenever the foliage is brushed or crushed underfoot. We're almost there, top 3 coming up, and trust me, the final pick is one every tea lover needs to know about. Taking the number 3 spot is echinacea, the purple coneflower, prized as one of the most well-known immune-supporting herbs in Western herbalism. Echinacea develops a deep taproot, so use a generous 7-gallon container filled with a well-draining potting mix amended with some coarse sand or perlite. If starting from seed, cold stratify them first by storing the seeds in a damp paper towel in the refrigerator for about 4 weeks. This mimics winter and triggers germination. Once planted, place the container in full sun. Echinacea is remarkably drought-tolerant once established, so water deeply only when the top couple of inches of soil are dry, and apply a light organic fertilizer just once in early spring. Patience is key here. While you can harvest the petals and leaves lightly in the first summer for a mild tea, the most potent part of the plant is the root, which needs 2 to 3 years to fully mature. In autumn of the plant's 2nd or 3rd year, carefully dig up a portion of the root, clean it thoroughly, and chop it before drying or simmering it directly for tea. To brew, simmer a spoonful of chopped fresh or dried root in water for 15 to 20 minutes, or steep the leaves and petals for a lighter, quicker cup. Echinacea has a long history of use among indigenous peoples of the Great Plains and remains one of the most popular herbal remedies today, commonly reached for at the first sign of a cold to help support the body's natural defenses. Here's a fascinating fact. Some Plains tribes historically chewed echinacea root for its natural numbing sensation on the tongue and gums, a property still noticeable in raw echinacea tinctures today. The runner-up at number 2 is lavender, a fragrant, silver-leaf perennial that turns any patio into a slice of the Mediterranean and produces one of the most calming teas you'll ever brew. Lavender is unforgiving about one thing: drainage. Use an unglazed terracotta pot or a breathable fabric grow bag around 5 gallons and fill it with a gritty, low-nutrient mix. A cactus or succulent blend works perfectly. Standard potting soil holds too much moisture and will quickly rot the roots. Lavender is painfully slow and unreliable from seed, so save yourself months of frustration and start with a nursery cutting. Place the pot in the sunniest, driest spot you have, and water only when the entire pot is completely dry throughout. Skip fertilizer entirely. Rich soil produces weak, floppy stems and dilutes the very essential oils you're growing this plant for. Harvest the flower spikes in early to mid-summer, snipping them just as the buds form, but before they fully open, which is when the aromatic oils are most concentrated. For tea, steep a small pinch of dried buds in hot water for 5 minutes. A little goes a long way, since the floral flavor is intense. Lavender tea has long been used as a calming ritual to unwind after a stressful day, and its aroma alone has been associated with lowered heart rate and reduced feelings of tension in traditional and modern wellness practices alike. A fascinating fact: during the Great Plague of London, lavender bundles were carried and worn as protective charms, and vinegar of the Four Thieves, a legendary lavender-infused remedy, was said to have protected grave robbers from catching the disease. Taking the crown at number 1 is lemon verbena, a fragrant, citrus-scented shrub that might just be the single most refreshing and versatile tea herb you can grow in a container. Lemon verbena grows into a substantial woody shrub, so give it room with a 10-gallon fabric grow bag. The breathable material is critical, since this plant is highly prone to root rot in poorly aerated soil. Fill it with a loose, well-draining mix amended generously with perlite. Skip seeds entirely. Lemon verbena is notoriously difficult to start this way. A rooted nursery cutting is the reliable path to success. Place your container in the sunniest possible spot, since this plant thrives on heat and light. During the growing season, water deeply, allowing the soil to drain fully between waterings, and feed every 2 weeks with a balanced liquid fertilizer to support its vigorous, leafy growth. Harvest continuously all summer by pruning branches back with sharp shears and stripping the leaves. Regular pruning actually benefits the plant, encouraging bushier, fuller growth rather than a tall, leggy shape. For tea, steep a handful of crushed fresh leaves, or a smaller amount of dried leaves, in hot water for 8 minutes. The result is an intensely lemony, floral tea that suits an unsettled stomach and has been traditionally used to ease everyday digestive discomfort and mild tension. Here's a fascinating fact. When Spanish explorers brought lemon verbena back from South America in the 17th century, it became so prized in Europe that wealthy households would sew the dried leaves directly into clothing linings, creating a slow-release natural perfume that lasted for months. And that's a wrap. 15 healing herbs and veggies you can grow right in containers on your patio, balcony, or windowsill, no matter how much space you have. From the calming warmth of chamomile to the citrusy brightness of lemon verbena, you now have everything you need to build your own backyard tea pharmacy from scratch. Which one are you planting first? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one, and it genuinely helps me plan future videos based on what you all want to grow next. If this video helped you out, do me a favor and hit that like button, and if you're new here, subscribe to The Practical Gardener so you don't miss the next guide. We're building a whole library of container growing videos, and you don't want to miss what's coming next. Thank you so much for watching. Now get out there, grab a container, and start growing. I'll see you in the next one.